WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American in Germany tasting rare and exotic whiskeys. Today I have something from Ireland called Two Stacks, Smoke and Mirrors. So you have the smoke, and every once in a while you have a little bit of silver thing like a mirror, and so on. So Irish whiskey, interesting. Smoke and Mirrors, Peated Stout Single Malt. So far, up until now, Two Stacks have always been blended whiskeys. They have a totally different concept here. So what they have here is a vatting of peated and imperial oatmeal stout cask aged malt. The C is over the cloud, and it was very difficult there. 46%. I paid €44.90 for this bottle. It is a 0.7 liter bottle. Very good. Whiskey base 172472. And the interesting thing is, if you look in the back here, you can see this as well. It is 30% peated malt, which is triple distilled. It is here 60% stout malt, which means that triple distilled single malt. Oh, hello. Focus. Triple distilled single malt was put in ex-imperial beer stout casks. And then 10% left over is what I'm going to say was double distilled malt. Everything comes from the Great Northern Distillery. Now, it's time for a history lesson after I pour something in my glass here. For those of you that know the history, this is going to be boring. For those of you who do not know the history, this might actually be enlightening. All right, so what do we have here? We have this, Connemara. Maybe you've heard of it. Now, Connemara is actually a region in Ireland. Beautiful place, been there. Went cycling with my wife on the water. Very, very nice. I have a little bit left of this from my German tasting, sorry. So what we have here is in the 1980s, let's say 1982, there were literally 2 distilleries in Ireland that were actually producing alcohol. We had down in the bottom, we had by Cork, Middleton, and way up in the north by the Giant's Causeway, we had Bushmill. That was it. And then we had this guy, Jack, so his son, John Teeling. John Teeling actually wrote his PhD, business PhD at Harvard University. And it was about the fall and decline of the Irish whiskey industry. And also one of his theses was, of course, that there should be more competition, that the monopoly, basically, of the Irish distiller has to be broken by some independent distillery. And so he actually took it upon himself, using subsidies from the government, using also money from business partners to start a distillery. Now, don't forget, this guy, John Teeling, is a teetotaler. He does not drink alcohol. And yet he revolutionized more than once the Irish whiskey industry. Good job. He's a hero of mine, all right? And sometimes it says never meet your heroes. This is a hero you can meet. You just need to listen to him. He's going to talk a lot, and he has a lot to say. All right, so he actually introduced then his new distillery, and one of the things that they wanted to do, him and also his master distiller that left, and Noel Sweeney, who had continued on, is to create a peated whiskey, because until that time, there were no peated whiskeys on the market. Yes, decades and decades and decades before that, there had been, but at that time in the 1980s, up in the 1990s, no Irish whiskey were actually in any form, way, or measure peated. And so he took upon himself to create the first Irish whiskey, at least in my lifetime, that was peated. So he went over to the Highlands, bought some peated malted barley, brought it back, put it in his distillery, boom, bang, we have the Connemara. Very good. Now, the 12-year-old is my favorite, but hey, I don't have that bottle right now. I wanted something very similar, so that's what we have here. John Teeling sold his distillery to Beam. Beam merged together with Beam Suntory, and then he took the money and actually he bought a old, just like Jack, is it Jack? Jack Rene? Just like Rene did with Waterford, he bought an old Guinness brewery, converted it into a distillery up by Dundalk, and it's now called the Great Northern Distillery. And that's where he produced this whiskey. So John Teeling did this, created this with his partners together at the distillery, and this. Now, John Teeling believes in 2 things. Number one, he believes many things, but in the whiskey world, he believes Irish whiskey is a blended whiskey. And so for all our independent distillers, we need to have a grain whiskey. And so he has a grain still, he has a double still, and he has a triple still possibility with pot stills. Big, 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 big pot stills are there up in Dundalk. And so this has double distilled from Great Northern. This has triple distilled. And the second thing he really believes in is that he thinks Irish whiskey needs to have some peated whiskey, some smoky whiskey. And so he actually has, as far as I'm aware, there are 3 levels, very lightly, medium, and heavily peated that he has done. And this is part of his peated whiskey. So this is triple distilled, aged in bourbon casks, and then we have 10% of the double, which was actually matured in first fill. So we have a little bit of the sweetness going on then. In there, we have a nice little delicate moment, fruity moment, and we have the 60%, which was in those. All right, going back now to our ex-imperial beer stout casks. First, they were whiskey casks, and then they put them to the brewery, put stout in them, and the third time we put whiskey in them again. All right, so probably it was first bourbon, second maybe even Irish whiskey, third it would have been stout, and then fourth it would have been here our Great Northern Distillery whiskey. And they blended these 3-part components together, 60-30-10, and they created this. The only thing is I do not have a number of bottles. This might be more limited than I think, or it might be more plentiful than I think. I don't know. Also, one thing that I thought was a little bit interesting, there's just a tiny little bit of paper here, and that's the entire consumer protection. I guess it's enough in the Irish world, but I don't know. It looked a little flimsy to me. Good, good, good. This time, no box. The last 2, the Tawny and the rum, and the Sultan, I think 3 of the 4 had boxes last time. Just the bottle, and this is just for Germany. And the world premiere was in Germany, really interesting. The world premiere of Irish whiskey is in Germany. Connections, relationships, and also market shares. And then the rest happened actually in Ireland afterwards. All right, on the nose, a lot of a story here. Now, I'm not a particular fan of this. I have plasticine, think Play-Doh. All right, so I'm getting a lot of that Play-Doh moment here. A little bit of plastic. I get really weird. I get a ginger, a very sharp natural ginger. I get cinnamon, and I get allspice. Put them together, and you get something which is weird. I guess that's the stout. And when I also sometimes nose this, I might get something like a hazelnut. All right, if you've never done that before, you can actually change the aromas by going up here. These are more volatile, and here we have the heavier. And if you nose down here, I get a lot more of that plasticine. If I nose up here, I get a lot more of the hazelnut. It is very, very interesting. Cool. All right. Over here, my Connemara, I get a more of a solid, I get a vegetal. I get a peatedness that is integrated into a maltiness. I like this more. The whiskey that actually converted me to Torf, that's German, to peated whiskey was the Connemara cask strength peated whiskey. The first time in my life I had a peated whiskey, and that's kind of good. And ever since then, I've been kind of chasing different types of peat and trying to figure out what I like and what I don't like. All right. So I think I showed you this. Let's see here. Yeah. The guys from Two Stack work together with Killowen. This is Darren. He used to be an architect. Now he's a pusher of boundaries in the Irish whiskey industry. And they work together, the Irish Coast Beers Limited, and they use his bottling facilities, let's say that. All right, so this bottle was actually bottled up there. Good. So produced in Republic of Ireland, bottled up in Northern Ireland. According to the regulations, there is no differentiation between Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland when it comes to whiskey. Just like when they play rugby matches or they play football, soccer matches, it's the Irish team. It's not the Northern Irish team or the Republic of, it's the Irish team. And exactly the same thing with whiskeys. All right, 46%. Cheers. Wow. I have the feeling that almost everything's dialed up. So first of all, you have dialed up sweetness, that stout. You have a dialed up peat. It's only 30%, but still it comes through. You have a dialed up sharpness, that ginger or pepper, that alcohol punch in your face. And you also have a little bit of dialed up, a little bit too much of that plasticine, that Play-Doh moment in there. And all those together, boom, 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 just blow my palate. It's just not my whiskey that I like. I'm sure other people like it better. It's just not my thing. The price, to be honest, 44 euros is acceptable. Yes, of course, I want to have a whiskey that costs 14 euros 90 and tastes like something I drink every day. But hey, this is a young company, so 44 euros 90 for a 4-year-old whiskey at 46%, peated. Hey, I can't complain. It's going to be more of a C- on the value for money. Taste, not my thing. It's more of a D-. I just dislike this whiskey on many different separate levels. Sorry. Not my wheelhouse. But other people I know have tried this and have said, wow, that's nice, or wow, this is great. I personally don't think that beer and Irish whiskey do go together perfectly. Some people do, some people don't. I'm one of the persons that just don't like that. It could use a little bit more time in the cask, to be honest, as well. But hey, we need to make some money, don't we? Now, if you dilute it down to about 40%, it does get a little bit better. Now, the plasticine on the nose, it's a little bit stronger. But on the palate, the whiskey, that alcohol bite actually calmed down. There's a lot more sweetness going on here. There's a little bit of a vegetal type of seaweed moment going on here. That stout really, really kicks in. Not a stout fan, sorry, don't drink beer. One of the worst persons in the world to actually review this whiskey, but that's the way it is. All right, good. Going over here to my Kalamata. I'm fairly sure, 80% sure, that they're also using malted barley from Scotland. As far as I know, there is not a big commercial site yet that create malted barley in Ireland. I think by up there by Silky, let's call them there, they're working on a partnership and to do local grain and have it heavily peated and so on. But at the moment, I don't know of any place that actually does malted barley, which means they get their malted barley still from Scotland, and I think they do too. Oh well, it's a shame, but it's no regulation that you have to have the barley from Ireland. So, cheers. I like this better. I like the 12 much better. I think the 12 is actually double the taste and double the price. But this is actually something I can drink. Now, if you are a Scotch drinker and you like a little bit of a peated whiskey, I would highly recommend going over to Ireland and try the Connemara, especially the 12-year-old. Yummy, yummy. It's not expensive. It's under 30 euros. And you can really try something that might actually tickle your palate. You might be very interested in the smoke and mirrors. It might be exactly up your alley. You want something with smoke and with stout beer influence. Ta-da! Not many of those going on at all in Scotland at the moment. Ireland is much, much more quicker to experiment with different things than the big boys are over in Scotland. So that's also something that's kind of interesting. So my question of the day is, what is your favorite peated whiskey? It can be from Ireland, it could be from a certain distillery of Ireland, or it could be from any distillery if you'd like. So I prefer the Connemara 12, which I really like as a peated whiskey. I do like the Talisker Port Ree. And at the moment, I'm really getting into Annandale, which I would never have thought. They have a very, very, so much stronger peat moment. And Scottabus. I actually like Scottabus a lot. Who knows what will happen next, all right? So, Whiskey Jason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American in Germany, tasting rare and exotic whiskeys. Two Stacks are doing interesting things. Limited reach at the moment. I don't think that they've gone to many other countries except for Ireland, UK, and Germany. But they are in Germany and they're looking to expand. So let's see what happens in the next months and years to come. All right, any place you can find Ireland craft beers, you'll probably be able to find Two Stacks in the near future. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, tell others, maybe even share this video with others. It was a nice little history lesson of the Irish whiskey industry, and if you have anything to correct or anything to add, please feel free to do that in the comments. All the best. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.